The thing that used to be Father Martinez exploded like a rotten melon when the blessed silver blade punched through its sternum. Black ichor sprayed across the altar, hissing where it hit the marble. Tobias Grimm rolled sideways as clawed fingers raked the air where his head had been a heartbeat earlier. Rule 3, he muttered, coming up in a crouch. If it speaks your name first, run. The demon wearing the priest's face had done exactly that when Tobias entered the chapel. Called him by name with Martinez's voice, honey-sweet and familiar. That was when Tobias knew the real Father Martinez was already dead. The creature reformed itself from the spreading puddle, bones crackling back into place. Its borrowed face hung loose now, Martinez's kind features sliding off like wet clay. Underneath, something else grinned with too many teeth arranged in perfect spirals. Tobias pulled his backup blade, this one carved from blessed oak and dipped in holy water that had been boiling for 3 days straight. The church taught him that different demons required different solutions. This one seemed to like wearing people, which meant it was probably a hollow. Hollows hated wood that had been blessed by someone who actually meant it. You know, Martinez was delicious, the thing said, its voice now a wet, grinding sound. He prayed right up until the end, even asked me to spare his congregation. The wooden blade sank deep into the demon's reformed chest. It screamed, a sound like breaking glass mixed with a baby crying. The borrowed flesh began to bubble and melt away, revealing something that looked like a skeleton made of burnt metal and rage. "Did you spare them?" Tobias asked, twisting the blade. "What do you think?" Tobias thought about the empty pews, the silence that had greeted him when he'd pushed open the chapel doors. He thought about the smell of copper that still lingered in the air, and the way the communion wine had looked too dark, too thick. He twisted the blade harder. The hollow came apart piece by piece, its metal bones clattering to the floor. Where they landed, the marble cracked and turned black. Tobias made a mental note to recommend the chapel be torn down and rebuilt somewhere else. The ground here was poisoned now. His phone buzzed. A text from Cardinal Vasquez. "Incident in Millbrook. 3 families. Come immediately." Tobias wiped the ichor off his blade with Martinez's torn vestments. 3 families meant at least 12 people, probably more if there were kids involved. He checked his watch. 11:15 p.m. Still had time before his first rule kicked in. Rule 1. Never hunt alone after midnight. Rule 2. Always carry blessed silver. Rule 3. If it speaks your name first, run. The Cardinal had taught him these rules during his first year as a hunter. Simple guidelines that had kept him alive through 47 confirmed demon killings across 12 states. Other hunters liked to complicate things, loaded themselves down with holy relics and complex rituals. Tobias preferred to keep it basic. Silver killed most demons outright. Wood worked on the ones that liked to possess people. Fire handled everything else. The rules covered the rest. He gathered his gear and headed for the door. The chapel felt different now, emptier. Not just because of the dead priest or the destroyed pews, but because something fundamental had changed here. Places touched by demons never quite recovered, like scars on the world itself. The drive to Millbrook took 40 minutes on empty highways. Tobias used the time to call Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, the church's expert on demon classification. She picked up on the second ring. "Grim. I heard about Martinez. How bad?" "Hollow got him. Probably been wearing him for weeks. You have anything on Millbrook?" Papers rustled on her end. 3 houses on Elm Street. The Kowalski family, the Brennans, and the Yamadas. All found dead this morning by a mail carrier. Local police are calling it a gas leak, but the bodies were arranged. Arranged how? Like they were praying. All of them, even the children. Kneeling in their living rooms, hands folded, facing the same direction. Tobias felt something cold settle in his stomach. Which direction? Northeast, toward the old Millbrook Cemetery. That was never good. Demons that made people pray usually had bigger plans than just killing a few families. They were trying to open something, create a gateway, or wake up something that should stay sleeping. "I'll be there in 10 minutes, he said. Tobias. Dr. Hawthorne's voice carried a warning. The bodies had been dead for 3 days, but the gas company says the leak only started this morning. 3 days. Long enough for whatever killed them to spread out, find new hosts, start building towards something bigger. Tobias pressed the accelerator harder. Millbrook looked like every other small town he'd visited over the past 5 years. Main Street lined with shops that closed at sunset, houses with perfect lawns and basketball hoops in the driveways, the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and knew their neighbors' names, the kind of place demons loved to corrupt. The police had cordoned off Elm Street with yellow tape and orange cones. 3 squad cars sat empty in the road, their occupants probably inside one of the houses trying to make sense of what they'd found. Tobias parked a block away and walked in through the Kowalski's backyard. The smell hit him before he reached the back door. Not the sulfur stench that most demons carried, but something sweeter. Like flowers left too long in water, pleasant until it turned rotten. He tried the door handle, unlocked. The kitchen looked normal at first glance. Clean dishes in the sink, a few coffee mugs on the counter. Children's drawings stuck to the refrigerator with colorful magnets. Then Tobias noticed the details that were off. Every knife in the knife block had been turned the same direction, handles pointing toward the living room. The coffee mugs all faced the same way too. Even the magnets on the fridge had been rearranged into neat rows, all aligned toward the front of the house. He followed the alignment through the kitchen and down a short hallway. Family photos lined the walls, but someone had turned them all to face the same direction. In each frame, the Kowalski family smiled at the camera, unaware that demons had been in their house, touching their belongings, preparing them for whatever came next. The living room had been cleared of furniture except for a single couch pushed against the far wall. In the center of the room, 4 bodies knelt on the hardwood floor. 2 adults, 2 children, all facing the front window. Their hands were folded in prayer, their eyes closed, their faces peaceful. They looked like they'd chosen to die this way. Tobias knew better. He'd seen demons that could control people before, make them dance like puppets until their bodies gave out. But this felt different, more organized, more patient. He knelt beside the father, a man in his 40s wearing a rumpled business shirt and khaki pants. No obvious wounds, no signs of struggle, just the sweet flower smell getting stronger, and the way the man's skin felt too cold, too waxy. "Find anything interesting?" Tobias spun around, hand going to his silver blade. A woman stood in the kitchen doorway, tall and thin with graying hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore a black dress that looked expensive and out of place in the suburban home. "Police," Tobias said. It wasn't a question, because police officers didn't usually show up alone to crime scenes, and they definitely didn't sneak up on people without announcing themselves. The woman smiled. Her teeth were very white and very straight, like someone had filed them all to the same length. "No," she said, "not police." That was when Tobias realized she knew his name, had been about to say it when she spoke. The words were right there on her tongue, ready to spill out and trigger Rule 3. He drew the silver blade and lunged forward in the same motion. The woman moved faster than any human could move, but not fast enough. The blade caught her across the shoulder, opening a line of black blood that steamed in the air. She hissed and jumped backward, her form blurring at the edges. "Tobias Grimm," she said, and her voice carried the sound of breaking glass. "The church's little killer. Rule 3. If it speaks your name first, run." But running meant leaving whatever this thing was loose in Millbrook, and there were still 2 more houses full of dead families arranged in prayer. Tobias had broken his own rules before when the situation demanded it. The trick was knowing when the risk was worth it. He feinted left and came in low with the blade. The woman caught his wrist with fingers that felt like iron bands, but she made a mistake. She tried to twist the weapon away instead of just killing him quickly. Tobias had been fighting demons for 5 years. He knew how they thought, how they moved, how they always underestimated human stubbornness. He drove his knee up into her ribs and felt something crack. Her grip loosened just enough for him to wrench free and open another cut across her forearm. More black blood hissed on the hardwood floor. "You're hurting innocent people," she said, backing toward the front window. "These families chose their fate. They prayed for salvation and found it. They prayed because you made them. I showed them the truth. Death is just the beginning, Tobias. The gateway is almost open. Soon, everyone will understand." Gateway. That confirmed his suspicion about the cemetery. Demons couldn't just appear in the world whenever they wanted. They needed invitation, permission, a crack in reality to squeeze through. But if something big enough was trying to come through, it might need a lot more than just an invitation. It might need sacrifice, worship. Families arranged in prayer, all facing the same direction, all offering their lives to open the door a little wider. "How many more?" he asked, keeping the blade between them. The woman laughed, a sound like wind chimes made of bone. "Enough. The Brennans gave themselves yesterday, the Yamadas this morning. By tomorrow night, the gateway will be wide enough for my master to step through. Tomorrow night." That gave him maybe 20 hours to figure out how to stop whatever was coming and close the gateway before it fully opened. Assuming he could get past this demon first. She was backing toward the window now, her form becoming more translucent with each step, trying to escape before he could finish her off. Tobias didn't let her reach it. He tackled her around the waist and drove them both to the floor. The impact knocked the breath out of him, but he managed to keep hold of the silver blade. The woman writhed underneath him, her skin shifting between human flesh and something that looked like wet leather. "You cannot stop what comes," she whispered. "The gateway has been chosen. The offerings have been made. Tomorrow night, this world will burn." Tobias pressed the silver blade against her throat. "Tell me how to close it." "You cannot close what should never have been shut." He pushed the blade deeper. Black blood bubbled around the edges. "Tell me." But the woman was already dissolving, her form breaking apart like smoke in a strong wind. Within seconds, nothing remained except the smell of burning flowers and a dark stain on the hardwood floor. Tobias sat back on his heels and checked his watch. 11:58 p.m. 2 minutes until midnight, which meant 2 minutes until Rule 1 kicked in, and he'd have to wait for backup before continuing the hunt. But backup was at least 6 hours away, and whatever was trying to come through the gateway wouldn't wait for the church's convenience. Sometimes the rules had to bend. Sometimes they had to break entirely. He gathered his gear and headed for the door. The Brennan house was next door, and the Yamada house was across the street. If he was going to break Rule 1, he might as well get a complete picture of what he was dealing with before Cardinal Vasquez arrived with reinforcements. Outside, Millbrook looked exactly the same as when he'd arrived. Quiet streets, porch lights glowing yellow, the distant sound of a television playing through someone's window. Normal suburban life continuing unaware that demons had been moving through their neighborhood, collecting prayers and preparing for something much worse. Tobias checked his gear one more time. Silver blade clean and ready. Wooden stake sharp and blessed. Holy water in a steel flask. Cell phone with Cardinal Vasquez on speed dial. Rule 1 said never hunt alone after midnight. Rule 2 said always carry blessed silver. Rule 3 said if it speaks your name first, run. The clock on his phone ticked over to 12 a.m. Tobias crossed the street toward the Yamada house. Rules be damned. The Yamada house felt different from the moment Tobias stepped onto the front porch. Where the Kowalski home had reeked of dying flowers, this place smelled like ozone and burnt copper. The air itself seemed thicker, like breathing through wet wool. The front door hung open. Inside, Every light in the house blazed at full brightness, casting harsh white rectangles across the lawn. Tobias could see straight through to the back door, which also stood wide open, as if something had passed through the house in a straight line, leaving both exits gaping behind it. He stepped inside and immediately understood why the demon woman had been so confident. The Yamadas hadn't just been arranged in prayer like the other families. They'd been carved open. 5 bodies knelt in the living room, facing northeast toward the cemetery. But their backs had been split from neck to tailbone, the skin peeled away in precise strips. Underneath, their rib cages spread open like bloody wings. Their hearts were missing. Tobias had seen plenty of demon work over the years, but this level of surgical precision suggested something new, something that understood human anatomy better than most doctors and cared enough to take its time. The cuts were too clean, too purposeful. This wasn't feeding or rage or even sacrifice. This was art. His phone rang. Cardinal Vasquez. "Grim, what's your status?" "I'm in the Yamada house. It's worse than we thought. These aren't just killings, Cardinal. Someone's harvesting organs." "Hearts?" Tobias looked at the open bodies again, noting the empty spaces where the hearts should be. "How did you know?" "Because I just got off the phone with Dr. Hawthorne. She found references to something called the quintuple gate in the church archives. It requires 5 human hearts offered at specific locations during a new moon. Tonight's a new moon. Grim. 5 hearts. 3 families. But Tobias had only seen 4 bodies in the Kowalski house, and 5 here, in the Yamada home. That was 9 hearts, not 5. "Cardinal, the numbers don't add up. 9 bodies means 9 hearts, not 5. Check the Brennan house. I think you'll find they only took what they needed." Tobias left the Yamada house and jogged across the yard to the Brennan's place. This one was dark, all the windows black except for a single light in what looked like the kitchen. The front door was locked, but the back door opened easily. The smell hit him first. Not flowers or ozone this time, but something metallic and sharp, like licking a battery. The kitchen was empty, but bloody footprints led from the sink to the hallway. Small prints, child-sized. He followed them to the living room and found exactly what Cardinal Vasquez had predicted. 2 bodies knelt in prayer position, facing northeast. An adult man and woman, both opened the same way as the Yamadas. But there were no children here, living or dead. The bloody footprints continued past the living room and up the stairs. Tobias climbed slowly, silver blade ready. At the top, the prints led to a closed bedroom door. He could hear something moving inside, a wet sliding sound like raw meat being dragged across tile. The door was unlocked. Inside, a girl who couldn't be more than 8 years old sat on the floor beside a twin bed. Her nightgown was soaked in blood, but she didn't appear injured. In her lap, she held a human heart, still warm, based on the steam rising from it in the cool air. She looked up when Tobias entered, and her eyes were completely black. "Hello, Mr. Grimm," she said in a voice too old for her face. "I've been waiting for you. Rule 3. If it speaks your name first, run." But this was a child. Possessed, obviously, but still just a kid whose family had been butchered around her. Tobias had never killed a possessed child before. Wasn't sure he could start now. "Let her go," he said, keeping the blade low but ready. The thing wearing the girl's face smiled. Emma volunteered. She watched us take her parents' hearts and asked if she could help. Such a sweet child, so eager to please. She's 8 years old. She doesn't understand what she's agreeing to. She understands perfectly. Death is natural, Mr. Grimm. What comes after death is natural too. We're simply helping the process along. The girl stood up, still cradling the heart. Blood dripped from between her fingers and splattered on the hardwood floor. "Would you like to hold it?" "It's still warm." Tobias felt his stomach clench, but he kept his voice steady. "Put it down, Emma. You don't have to do this." Emma isn't here anymore, the thing said. She went to sleep when her parents started screaming. I let her sleep through the whole thing. Wasn't that kind of me? The kindness was somehow worse than any threat. Demons that tortured and killed were one thing. Demons that convinced themselves they were being merciful were something else entirely. The gateway, Tobias said. How many hearts do you still need? Just one more. Would you like to volunteer? It would be over quickly. Not mine, someone else's. The thing tilted Emma's head, considering. There's a homeless man who sleeps behind the grocery store. He prays every night for God to take him home. We thought we might grant his wish. One more heart meant one more innocent person dead, but it also meant Tobias might have time to stop the gateway from opening, if he could find where they were planning to perform the ritual. Where's the gateway? He asked. The cemetery, of course. Where else would you build a door between the living and the dead? Millbrook Cemetery sat on a hill northeast of town, exactly where all the bodies had been facing. Tobias had driven past it on his way into town without giving it a second thought. Just another small-town graveyard with weathered headstones and a few dead trees. Now he wondered what he'd missed. When? 3 a.m., the hour when the veil is thinnest. Tobias checked his watch, 12:47 a.m. That gave him just over 2 hours to figure out how to close a gateway he didn't understand and stop whatever was trying to come through it. Without backup, because Cardinal Vasquez wouldn't arrive until dawn. Emma, he said, trying to reach past the demon to whatever might be left of the child. If you're still in there, I need you to fight this thing. Can you do that for me? The girl's black eyes flickered for just a moment. Her mouth opened as if to speak, but then her face went blank again. When the demon answered, its voice carried a new edge of irritation. She's gone, Mr. Grimm. Just like her parents. Just like this whole town will be once the gateway opens. What's coming through? Something beautiful. Something that will make death unnecessary, because everyone will already be dead. A world where pain ends, and peace begins, and no one ever has to choose between them again. That sounded like the kind of philosophical nonsense demons love to spout when they thought they were winning. But underneath the pretty words, Tobias heard something that made his blood turn cold. This wasn't about conquest or destruction. This was about transformation. Something wanted to change the fundamental rules of life and death, and it had convinced these demons that mass murder was mercy. The hearts, he said. What happens to them? The girl held up the one in her hands. It had stopped steaming and was starting to turn gray around the edges. They anchor the gateway. 5 human hearts, freely given, create 5 points of connection between worlds. The geometry is quite elegant. Freely given. That was the key phrase. Demons couldn't just murder people and use their hearts. The victims had to choose to sacrifice themselves, even if they didn't understand what they were choosing. That was why the families had been arranged in prayer. The demons had convinced them to offer their lives willingly, which meant the homeless man wouldn't be enough unless he truly wanted to die. You're lying, Tobias said. The hearts weren't freely given. You forced those families to pray. We showed them the truth about their situation. They made their own choices based on that information. Free will intact. The demon was technically correct, which made it worse. If the victims had genuinely chosen to sacrifice themselves, even under false pretenses, their hearts would work as anchors. The gateway would open, and whatever waited on the other side would step through into the world. Tobias needed to get to the cemetery before 3 a.m. But first, he had to deal with the possessed child standing in front of him. Emma, he said again, I know you can hear me. Your parents are dead, but you don't have to be. Fight this thing. The girl's face went completely still. For a long moment, she didn't move or speak. Then, very quietly, she began to cry. Mister, she whispered, and her voice sounded like a child's again. I can't make it stop. It's showing me pictures of mommy and daddy and they're hurt and I want to help them, but I can't move my hands. Emma, listen to me. The thing inside you is lying. Your parents are gone, but you're still alive. I need you to fight it so I can help you. I'm trying, but it's so strong and it keeps showing me the pictures and telling me everything will be better if I just go to sleep like mommy and daddy did. The demon was using the girl's grief against her, convincing her that death was reunion. Classic manipulation, but effective. Especially with a traumatized child who just watched her parents die. Emma, what's your favorite color? The question caught both Emma and the demon off guard. The girl blinked, black eyes flickering back to normal brown for just a second. Purple, she said. What's your favorite food? Mac and cheese, the kind with the little hot dogs. Each answer pushed the demon further back. Tobias had learned this trick from an exorcist in Baltimore. Demons could mimic human behavior, but they couldn't access genuine human memories without the host's cooperation. By forcing Emma to remember specific details about her life, he was making her reassert control over her own mind. What's your dog's name? Biscuit. He's a golden retriever, and he likes to chase tennis balls and swim in the lake and... Emma's voice trailed off as the black returned to her eyes. Clever, Mr. Grimm, but ultimately pointless. The demon had regained control, but Tobias had learned something important. Emma was still alive in there, still fighting, which meant he might be able to save her if he could figure out how to exorcise a demon without killing the host. Unfortunately, he'd never learned how to do that. The gateway opens in 2 hours, the demon said through Emma's mouth. You can stay here and try to save one little girl, or you can go to the cemetery and try to save everyone else. But you cannot do both. It was right. Tobias had maybe 40 minutes to get to the cemetery, find the gateway, and figure out how to close it before the final heart was offered. He couldn't waste that time on an exorcism he didn't know how to perform. But he also couldn't leave a possessed child alone in a house full of corpses. Come with me, he said. Excuse me? To the cemetery. Bring the heart. You want to be there when the gateway opens anyway, right? The demon considered this. You would willingly bring a possessed child to the site of a demonic ritual? I would bring Emma somewhere she can see what her helpers are really planning to do. Maybe that will be enough to snap her out of it. It was a desperate plan, but desperate was all Tobias had left. If he could get Emma to the cemetery and show her the truth about what the demons intended, she might be able to break free on her own. And if not, at least he'd be able to keep an eye on her while he tried to stop the gateway. The demon smiled with Emma's face. Very well, Mr. Grimm. Let's go watch the world end together. They left the Brennan house and walked to Tobias's car. Emma climbed into the passenger seat, still holding the heart like a teddy bear. The drive to the cemetery took 12 minutes through empty streets. Millbrook slept peacefully around them, unaware that in less than 2 hours, something might step through from another world and change everything forever. The cemetery gates stood open. Beyond them, Tobias could see lights moving between the headstones, flashlights or candles, too distant to tell which. The demon woman he'd fought in the Kowalski house was probably there, along with however many others were part of this operation. Park here, Emma said as they approached the gates. They're expecting us to walk. Tobias pulled over and turned off the engine. Through the windshield, he could see the lights more clearly now. Definitely candles, arranged in some kind of pattern among the graves. 5 points forming a rough star, with something large and dark at the center. The gateway, Emma said, following his gaze. Beautiful, isn't it? It looks like a hole in the ground. That's because you're only seeing it with human eyes. Emma can see what it really is. She's been watching us build it for weeks. Weeks. That meant this operation had been planned long before the families were killed. The demons had been preparing the site, gathering materials, waiting for the right time to begin their harvest. What's really coming through? Tobias asked. Emma's black eyes reflected the candlelight from the cemetery. A friend. Someone who understands that death and life are just different states of being, and that the barrier between them is artificial, temporary. And what happens when the barrier comes down? Everyone gets to choose: stay alive and suffer, or cross over and find peace. True freedom, Mr. Grimm. No more pain, no more fear, no more loss, just eternal rest. It sounded almost reasonable the way Emma said it, which was probably the point. Demons were excellent at making mass murder sound like a gift. They got out of the car and walked through the cemetery gates. Up close, the candle arrangement was even more elaborate than it had appeared from the road. 5 perfect circles of black candles, each one surrounding a different grave. The headstones in each circle had been carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. At the center of the 5 circles, someone had dug a hole about 8 feet across and impossibly deep. Tobias couldn't see the bottom even with the candles providing light. The edges of the hole seemed to shift and move when he wasn't looking directly at them. "The gateway," Emma said proudly. "It took us 3 weeks to dig deep enough to reach the other side. How deep is it? Depth is relative when you're tunneling between dimensions. We went down until we came out up." 3 figures moved between the candles, placing small objects at specific points around each circle. Tobias recognized the demon woman from the Kowalski house, her shoulders still bandaged where his silver blade had cut her. The other 2 looked human, but they moved with the same fluid grace that meant they were either possessed or not human at all. "The hearts," one of them called. "Are they ready?" Emma held up the organ she'd been carrying. In the candlelight, it looked more gray than red, but it still pulsed with a slow, hypnotic rhythm. "4 anchored and waiting," she called back. "1 more to come." As if summoned by her words, footsteps crunched on the gravel path behind them. Tobias turned to see a man in ragged clothes walking through the gates. Thin, bearded, carrying a shopping bag full of what looked like empty bottles. The homeless man the demon had mentioned. He walked straight toward the gateway without hesitation, his eyes fixed on something Tobias couldn't see. When he reached the edge of the hole, he knelt down and pressed his hands to his chest. "Thank you," he said to the darkness below. "I'm ready." And that was when Tobias realized they were all about to witness a man willingly rip out his own heart. Tobias moved faster than he'd ever moved in his life. The homeless man's hands were already clawing at his chest, fingernails drawing blood through his torn shirt, when Tobias tackled him sideways away from the hole. They rolled across the cemetery grass, the man fighting to get back to the gateway with surprising strength. "Let me go," he gasped. "They promised me peace. No more cold nights, no more hunger, just peace." "They lied to you," Tobias said, pinning the man's arms. "There's no peace down there, just more demons looking for a way into our world." The 3 figures around the candles had stopped their ritual preparations and were moving toward them now. The demon woman he'd fought earlier drew something from her coat that gleamed silver in the candlelight. Not blessed silver like his blade, but sharp enough to kill. "Mr. Grimm," Emma said from somewhere behind him, "you're making this more difficult than it needs to be." Tobias kept the homeless man pinned with one hand and drew his own blade with the other. "What's your name?" he asked the man. "Jerome. Jerome Patterson. Please, I just want it to stop hurting." "Jerome, I'm going to let you go, but I need you to stay away from that hole. Can you do that?" Jerome nodded, tears streaming down his weathered face. Tobias released him and stood up, silver blade ready. The 3 demons had formed a loose circle around them, cutting off any escape routes. 5 hearts, freely given," the woman said. "That's all we need. Jerome has already chosen. You cannot change a man's free will. I can give him better options." Tobias reached into his jacket and pulled out his cell phone. A few quick taps brought up Cardinal Vasquez's direct number. "Cardinal, I need an emergency shelter placement in Millbrook. Tonight. Full services, no questions asked. Grim, this is hardly the time for social work. Jerome Patterson. Homeless. Probably has family somewhere. Get him into a program and I'll owe you a favor. The line went quiet for a moment. Then, consider it done. But Grim, the gateway. I'm working on it. Tobias hung up and looked at Jerome. How does a warm bed sound? 3 meals a day, help finding work, maybe even tracking down any family you might have? Jerome stared at him. You're serious? Dead serious. The church runs shelters in 12 states. We'll find you a place. But they said... Jerome looked toward the hole, then back at Tobias. They said death was the only way to stop the pain. Death stops everything, including any chance of the pain getting better. This gives you a chance. For a long moment, Jerome didn't move. Then he took a step back from the gateway. I'd like to try the shelter. The demon woman screamed in rage. You cannot interfere with a willing sacrifice. He changed his mind. Free will works both ways. That was when Emma stepped forward, still holding the 4th heart. Jerome doesn't matter anymore, she said. We have 4 hearts already anchored. I can be the 5th. The black in her eyes had spread, covering the whites completely. When she smiled, her teeth looked too sharp, too numerous. Emma, no, Tobias said. You don't want to die. Emma went to sleep hours ago, the thing said through her mouth. But her heart still beats. Her choice still counts. Before Tobias could stop her, the girl plunged her small fingers into her own chest. Blood sprayed between her ribs as she felt around for her heart, her face showing no pain at all. Tobias lunged forward, but the demon woman intercepted him with her silver blade. They crashed to the ground beside Jerome, rolling and grappling for control of their weapons. Her blade scraped across his ribs, drawing blood. His found her shoulder again, opening the half-healed wound from their earlier fight. Behind them, Emma continued her grisly work. The wet sound of tearing flesh mixed with her delighted laughter. Jerome! Tobias shouted while wrestling for the woman's knife. The candles! Kick over the candles. Jerome understood immediately. He ran to the nearest circle and began stomping on the black candles, crushing them into wax and broken glass. Each candle he destroyed made the gateway hole shimmer and shrink slightly. The other 2 demons abandoned Emma and rushed toward Jerome. They moved with inhuman speed, but Jerome had a head start and kept kicking. 5 candles down, then 10, then 15. The demon woman drove her knee into Tobias's stomach and broke free. Stop him! But Tobias was already moving. He rolled sideways and came up next to Emma, who had just pulled her own heart from her chest. It beat slowly in her small hands, dark blood dripping through her fingers. Emma, he said quietly, I know you're still in there. Look at what it's making you do. The girl's completely black eyes fixed on her own heart. For just a moment, her expression changed. Horror replaced the demon's satisfaction. What did I do? She whispered in her normal voice. Oh God, what did I do? It wasn't you, Tobias said. The demon made you do it, but you can still fight back. Emma looked at the beating heart in her hands, then at the gateway hole that was shrinking as Jerome destroyed more candles. Understanding dawned on her young face. If I don't give it freely, she said, the gateway won't work. That's right. You have to choose. The demon fought back, and Emma's eyes went black again. The choice is made, it snarled. The heart is removed. The sacrifice is complete. Not yet, Emma said, her voice mixing child and demon. I still have to put it in the hole. She stumbled toward the gateway, her heart held out like an offering. But with each step, she fought the demon's control. Her movements became jerky, uncertain. Jerome had destroyed 3 of the 5 candle circles now. The gateway hole was definitely smaller, maybe 6 feet across instead of 8. but it was still large enough for whatever waited on the other side. The demon woman tackled Jerome from behind, her blade raised to finish him. Tobias threw his own silver blade like a spear. It caught her in the back, between the shoulder blades, and she collapsed with a scream that shattered every piece of glass in the cemetery. The other two demons reached Jerome a second later. Tobias had no more weapons except the wooden stake in his belt, but wood wouldn't help against demons that weren't possessing anyone. Then he remembered Dr. Hawthorne's words about the gate requiring 5 hearts freely given. If the demons couldn't get 5 willing sacrifices, the gateway would close on its own. "Emma," he shouted, "drop the heart." "I can't," she called back, still fighting the demon for control of her own body. "It's too strong." "Then change your mind about giving it freely." Emma stopped walking, her face scrunched up in concentration. I don't want to die," she said slowly. "I want to see Biscuit again. I want to eat mac and cheese. I want to grow up and have kids and—" The heart in her hands stopped beating. The moment Emma withdrew her consent, the gateway began collapsing. The hole folded in on itself like a deflating balloon, making a sound like screaming wind. The remaining candles went out all at once, plunging the cemetery into darkness. The two demons rushing toward Jerome simply vanished, as if they'd never been there at all. Without the gateway to anchor them, they couldn't maintain their presence in the world. Emma collapsed to her knees, still holding her motionless heart. Blood soaked her nightgown, but she was breathing. Somehow, impossibly, she was still alive. Tobias ran to her side. "How are you still conscious?" "The demon kept me alive," she whispered. "Needed me functional until the ritual finished. But now we get you to a hospital. Will they believe you when you tell them a little girl ripped out her own heart?" That was a problem. No doctor would accept the truth about what had happened here. But Cardinal Vasquez would know people who could help. Doctors who worked with the church and understood that some medical emergencies couldn't be explained in textbooks. "Cardinal Vasquez," Tobias said into his phone. "I need a medical team in Millbrook. Specialized team, a child with supernatural trauma." "How supernatural?" "She's talking to me with her heart in her hands." Jesus Christ, 20 minutes. Tobias hung up and looked around the cemetery. Jerome sat beside one of the destroyed candle circles, shaking but unharmed. The demon woman's body had already started dissolving into black mist. In an hour, there would be no physical evidence that anything unusual had happened here. Just another quiet night in a small town where people minded their own business and didn't ask too many questions. "Mr. Grimm?" Emma's voice was getting weaker. "Is my heart supposed to be this cold?" "The medical team will fix it," he said, hoping that was true. "Just hold on. I'm sorry I tried to end the world. That wasn't you. That was the demon. But I let it in. When I saw Mommy and Daddy die, I was so sad that I just opened up inside. Let it take control because I didn't want to feel anything anymore." Tobias knelt beside her. "Feeling sad is normal, Emma. Feeling angry is normal too. That doesn't make you weak or bad. It makes you human. Will I ever feel normal again?" "I don't know," Tobias said honestly. "But you'll have help figuring it out. I promise." In the distance, he could hear sirens approaching. Cardinal Vasquez's people, probably accompanied by regular emergency services who would need a cover story. Tobias would have to come up with something believable. Gas leak, maybe, or some kind of chemical spill that caused hallucinations. The church was good at cover stories. "Mr. Grimm?" Jerome approached carefully. "That shelter you mentioned, is the offer still good?" "Better than good. Cardinal Vasquez will have someone pick you up within the hour." Jerome nodded and walked toward the cemetery gates to wait. A man who'd been ready to die for a promise of peace, now willing to live for a chance at something better. Emma's eyes fluttered closed. Her breathing was shallow but steady. Whatever the demon had done to keep her alive was still working, at least for now. Tobias checked his watch. 2:47 a.m., 13 minutes before the gateway was supposed to open fully. Instead, it was gone completely, leaving only a normal hole in the ground that some groundskeeper would probably fill with dirt in the morning. 3 families dead, but 1 little girl saved. A homeless man given hope instead of false promises. A gateway closed before anything worse could come through. By church standards, it counted as a victory. Rule 1. Never hunt alone after midnight. Rule 2. Always carry blessed silver. Rule 3. If it speaks your name first, run. Sometimes, Tobias thought, rules were meant to be broken, but only when breaking them saved more lives than following them. The sirens were getting closer. Time to start thinking up lies that sounded like truth.